In the late 15th century, Europe stood on the edge of discovery. When Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic in 1492, he unknowingly opened the door to an entirely new world. This discovery triggered a wave of exploration. Nations like Spain, France, and England rushed to claim land, wealth, and power. But this land was far from empty. Millions of indigenous people had lived there for thousands of years, building complex societies and cultures. To the Europeans, this was opportunity. To the natives, it was the beginning of an irreversible change. This moment marked the true beginning of American colonization, a story of ambition, conflict, and transformation that would shape the future of the world. By the early 1600s, exploration began to turn into settlement. In 1607, Jamestown became the first successful English colony in North America. But life was harsh. Disease, hunger, and brutal winters took many lives. Survival was never guaranteed. Then, in 1620, a new group arrived on the Mayflower. They were known as the Pilgrims, searching for religious freedom. They built small communities in a land that was unfamiliar and unforgiving. But they did not survive alone. With help from Native Americans, they learned how to grow food and adapt. Over time, these fragile settlements endured. Despite loss, despite struggle, they survived. And in doing so, they marked the beginning of a permanent European presence in America. As the colonies grew, so did conflict. Settlers pushed deeper into the land, bringing them into direct clash with Native Americans. Land, resources, and survival became sources of tension. What began as disputes often turned into violence. Villages were destroyed, and countless lives were lost. At the same time, a darker system was taking shape. Across the Atlantic, African slaves were brought to the colonies, forced to work on plantations. It marked the beginning of a brutal system of slavery. The colonies grew wealthier, but at a devastating human cost. Expansion brought power, but it also brought suffering and injustice.
As the colonies grew, life slowly began to change. Small settlements turned into busy towns, and trade routes connected the New World to Europe. Farming became the backbone of colonial life, while ships carried goods like tobacco, cotton, and timber across the Atlantic. But as the colonies became more successful, tensions started to rise. The British government, under Britain, wanted greater control and imposed heavy taxes on the colonists. Laws were enforced without representation, leaving many settlers feeling powerless and angry. Protests began to spread. Merchants, farmers, and ordinary people started to resist British authority, demanding rights and freedom. What once began as distant colonies were now becoming united. And this growing frustration would soon ignite a revolution that would change history forever.
As the American colonies grew, life slowly began to improve. Farms expanded, trade increased, and small settlements turned into busy towns and cities. The colonies became more organized, developing their own systems of government and economy. But across the ocean, Britain wanted more control. New laws and taxes were imposed to strengthen British power and recover war debts. However, the colonists were not happy. They believed it was unfair to be taxed without having a voice in decisions. This idea became known as no taxation without representation. Tensions continued to rise as protests spread throughout the colonies. Events like the Boston Tea Party showed growing resistance against British rule. The relationship between the colonies and Britain grew weaker day by day. And soon, this conflict would lead to something much bigger: revolution.
Thanks for watching.
please subscribe our channel.